Ah, mint tea. The best chemical reaction for the soul and body. Welcome back, my beautiful friends, to another episode of Books and Coffee. Oh man, feels good to be back. Got my nice little hot cup of tea this time around. Got ourselves a little mint tea. But yeah, so let's get ready to just dive into this last week's little venture into our scientific romance. We're wrapping up the end of the month with a book that actually has been on my shelf for quite a while. I've read it before, actually back in high school, and I thought, why not revisit it? And oh boy, ooh man, was it a journey. But yes, guys, the book we are going to be reviewing for the last month of March is Jekel Loves Hyde, written by Bethany Fantasy, or Fantasky. Yes, I can read, but yes, Jekel and Hyde, written by Beth Fantasky. So yeah, but I actually bought this book, like I said, a long time ago, back way back, probably actually about the time it was published, I'm not gonna lie. Very into high school days, definitely suits my little emo-esque type romance, which we'll get into as to why in just a few. But of course, let's actually get to know the author a little bit for Miss Beth, and yeah. So Miss Beth Fantasky actually started off as a speechwriter right after she got out of college, and then she became a journalist, to which of course she then went to debut with her book Jessica's Guide to Dating on the Dark Side, which actually sold over 45,000 copies within the first few months of it being published. So really impressive. I also read that book. I do distinctly remember liking it, but not enough to keep it around. She actually came out with Jessica's Guide to Dating on the Dark Side, and then its sequel, Jessica's Guide into Marriage in the Dark Side, something like that. I can't remember. All I know was that it was a semi-fun read, but also very frustrating, because there was just a lot of melodrama that even myself back in the day did not appreciate, and yeah. And a little bit, I'm not gonna lie, a little bit of Jekel and Hyde, the Jekel Loves Hyde has that too, but not as much. It's probably why it stuck around quite a bit. Which of course brings us back to our book of topic, which, you know, Jekel Loves Hyde was actually published in 2010, which makes a lot of sense in terms of like my vague memory of when I bought it, because I do remember buying Jessica's Guide to Dating on the Dark Side and this book around the same time. Jessica's book actually getting published before Jekel Loves Hyde, I think by probably a couple of years. So, but yeah, obviously I favored this one more as it stuck around with me for various reasons, which we will now attempt to go over. But first, the plot. Good girl gone bad. Jill Jekel has always obeyed her parents' rules, especially the one about opening the mysterious box in her father's office. But when her dad is murdered and her college savings disappears, she's tempted to peek inside, because the contents just might be a key to winning a lucrative chemistry scholarship. To better her odds, Jill enlists the help of the gorgeous, brooding Tristan Hyde, who has his own dark secrets locked away. As the team of Jekel and Hyde, they recreate experiments based on the classic novel, hoping not only to win a prize, but save Tristan's sanity. Maybe his life. As things heat up in the lab, though, Jill's accidental taste of a formula unleashes her darkest nature and will compel her to risk everything, even Tristan's love, just for the thrill of being bad. Oh my God. This book, y'all. Jesus Christ. So obviously, guys, with the cringe of a back read as that, obviously the question is, why would I choose to review this book that you can tell right off the bat is super, super mega cringe. And trust me, we will get to it, my beautifuls. We will get to it. But obviously, one of my biggest reasons for wanting to review this book is obviously, I'm not gonna lie, I really wanted to reread it. I really wanted to revisit the characters, because I do remember reading like sections of it. Like I remember scenes within the story and remembering like, oh yeah, I remember that part. That was a really good part. I remember how it made me feel. And I just kind of wanted to relive those memories. And not only that, but like as I was reading, I did get to kind of like reflect on those memories of like, oh yeah, no, I remember like where I was and stuff when I was reading this book, or like how I felt back in the day, because I feel similar now. So it was, I'm not gonna lie, it was really fun to kind of like revisit like my old memories and my old self again. It's bad. But yeah, so I mean that's basically one of the reasons, was for nostalgic reasons. Like many books and stuff. I know that my friend was telling me that she's actually very scared to reread books that she read back in the day, because she wants to keep the memory, a good memory. She doesn't want to taint it, because, as we grow older, our tastes change, and then we realize how cringy some of the stuff we used to read really was. And boy, oh boy, ooh, was she not wrong? Because again, guys, like, obviously I'm older now. Like I don't read young adult novels anymore. I very rarely do. I will say I haven't stopped I haven't stopped completely. Like, I haven't quit cold turkey whatsoever. I still do. There are still there's still a few handful of young adult novels that I am either currently reading or I actually just bought, and I'm actually very excited to read them. But I'm not gonna lie, it takes a really, really, really good story and even a little bit of like really good romance to keep me interested. Because again, they're young adult novels. They're not, our sexy eroticas that we're all about right now. There ain't no super steamy scenes, but there's like the sexy scenes that are all in young adult, where it's like, oh man, it's just at the edge. Like they just touch it and then they like let it go. Like, yes, that those are the books where it's like, okay, I can appreciate it when it's written right. But this, man, was just, oh man, cringe for days. Because again, I'm gonna just be for real with you guys. I am an adult, horny woman who likes to read books about sexy dudes who are either take place in historical fantasy fiction settings that are, range in the varying ages of 20 to like 30 now. And there's gotta be some spice. So yes, I mean, again, that's what I'm into now. But again, there are some, young adult novel books that are out there right now that I am currently reading, or, just bought, that I am interested in, that just gives me just the right amount of spice, but not like, doesn't push over the edge like my beautiful eroticas do. But that's okay. This one kind of did it, just in just really cringy kind of way. Oh my god, just thinking about it again just has me in, oh my god. Because again, like, just to give a little like backstory in terms of like how old like Jill and Tristan are. They are seniors in high school, which again makes sense for when I first bought this, because when I first bought it, it was like 2010, so I was like a sophomore in high school. So obviously, reading a book about seniors, oh man, that was like, oh yes, oh my gosh, a senior. Like, we all know the girl trope fantasies of falling in love with a senior dude. Like, it's not that uncommon. But yes, so like back in the day, yes, they were older. Rereading it now, it's like, these are children. Children. And plus, like, I think the other thing too, in terms of like reminiscing and like kind of like remembering and like bonding with my old self, was that I kind of just got to talk to myself, because there were moments where I was literally like reading the book and just being like, what? You actually read this? It's like, what? You actually, what? To which, of course, my younger self would just respond with, yeah, man, he's so tragic. Like, oh man, he just has all these feelings inside of him, and she's just trying to free him, you know? He's a beautiful, dark soul. You would read something this cringy. And you know what? I can't fault you for it. So yeah, just being able to have those like inner dialogues with myself and my old self, yeah, no, definitely brings back some memories. And yes, no, I would talk to myself quite often reading this book. I would be embarrassed, but at the same time, slightly proud. But yes, it would like, the book would always just kind of like throw, in terms of like the cringe parts of it being like, oh, Tristan is like so brooding and dark and handsome, but he's also mysterious and dangerous. And I'm just immediately drawn to him. And then of course you have Jill's description every time it pops up, and like, you know, the descriptions would be like, she's so pure and innocent, and she's too good for me. I'm bad. And yeah, he was just like, ugh. Like, I didn't want to throw up, but I came very close a few times. Most times I would just be like, and close, because I just couldn't handle the cringe at some points. I was just like, nope. But of course, like I said, it's a young adult novel, so of course they're gonna be kind of edgy. They're, you know, they're for a different kind of audience, which again is something that I kind of had to remind myself as I was reading this. It's like, you know what? I was the target audience back in 2010 when I was a sophomore in high school, so my emo self over here really did enjoy, you know, my high school emo self over here really did enjoy that kind of book, and that was the target audience. You know, I myself as a 20-something-year-old am not the target audience, so it makes sense why the cringe was so hardcore for me to reread it. But again, because I had read it before, and when I was rereading the scenes that I vaguely remembered that I liked, I still liked them. I just had to get through, you know, the cringe bullshit first, and then I was like, okay, this is why I like this book. Which, of course, you know, again, brings me to basically the third point of the whole thing, which, I mean, if you couldn't guess the first two, it was basically like, you know, reminiscing and then the cringe. But again, needless to say, beyond the cringe, obviously, the story, you know, in retrospect, still holds up pretty good. There are a few, you know, weird wonky things, but I mean, overall, the story actually, it's very interesting, very good, especially for being written back in 2010. You know, reflecting on it, and especially after reading it, it does have a really good story, and it has a really cool message in it about, like, you know, one's inner darkness, and like, you know, falling into one's dark impulses, but how darkness is beauty. And I'll get a little more into that at first, but like right now I really just want to tackle in terms of the characters, because that was something that I really did enjoy getting to kind of revisit, because again, I haven't read this book in years, and so being able to reread this book was almost kind of like revisiting an old friend, while at the same time kind of like the story was new, because again, so long I couldn't remember a lot of things, and so it was like getting to see these characters in a new mindset, in a new light, if you will. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really cool. I will say one of the things that I completely forgot about Tristan was that apparently he's British. Like, what? like I remember reading this book and that just didn't register with me. I mean, that just goes to show you how like how young people don't pay attention to like little details like that. But then you read it in here and it's like, oh, he's British, because they mention he has a British accent. He went to school in London for a bit, but they don't really touch on his like ethnicity very like they don't, they say it once and then they make you forget it until they mention it later on, like, oh, his British accent. And I was like, oh, that's right, he's British. The other thing that I thought was really, really cool about the book was that they actually still intertwine the original Jekel and Hyde story with this story. By that I mean is that they kind of make it like their family's legacy. Like the actual Jekel and the actual Hyde were real people, and like the story is actually based on, vague true facts that actually happened. And it's this really crazy journey of like, what? Like, these people were real? Because again, like Jill, she has like the last name Jekel, but she never thought that like the story was real. And the same thing with Tristan. When Tristan was growing up, he never thought that the tale was real until his grandfather, kind of gives in the book and basically says, no, this is our family legacy. And so his mind is blown. And of course, when he tells Jill all of this eventually, her mind is blown, because it's like, what? But this is a work of fiction. And then you find out that it's like, oh no, it's facts. It's our family legacy. Oh shit. The other thing that I completely forgot, about this book, was that it actually has dual narration in it. And what I mean by that is that it's told through Jill's point of view, in one instance, and then it's told through Tristan's point of view. And I completely forgot that this book had that. And so it kind of clicked for me when I was rereading it and being like, this is why I like those type of those books, because again, it gives you a little introspective into like what our female protagonist is thinking, about the male protagonist, and the male protagonist has his thoughts and his emotions and like his feelings and thoughts about like the female protagonist. So I was kind of a little bit mind blown about that, because again, I completely forgot that this book does that, and it does it really well. Another thing about this book too is that the chapters are like insanely short. There's, I think I want to say over 80, almost 100 chapters in this. I think the epilogue makes it 100, but they're really short, really they go by super quick. And that's something that again, I kind of forgot that was a thing, but then I really enjoyed it, because most of the time I read very lengthy books, and obviously the chapters are very long. Outlander. So getting to reread this book, I was like, okay, yes, no, I remember that this was also an aspect of the book that I really liked. So getting back to the theme and the premise of one's dark side, I absolutely loved it, and I'm so happy that I reread this book, because I feel like back in the day I didn't really take the message that it was that the book was saying and appreciate it as much. Now I do, because obviously it makes a little more sense, especially as you grow up and stuff. You have these dark impulses, you have these dark desires and stuff, and sometimes you try to fight them, and you should, sometimes, fight those dark impulses, but you shouldn't ever be totally ashamed of the dark impulses. You just have to learn how to make beauty out of it, which is something that this book really does translate well, I feel like. So for example, in the book, Tristan is having to deal with the quote-unquote beast and its desire and impulse to hurt people. And so it's that emotional turmoil of, especially for males, is that, whenever they get picked on, or whenever they get pushed around and stuff, there is always that urge for violence, which again in society is crazy, but it happens. And so Tristan is constantly struggling with the beast, because the beast will just has so much control over his life as of right now, that he will lose kind of his side of his consciousness, and then the beast takes over and hurts people. He just lets the violence happen, and so he is constantly afraid of the beast, and of the beast hurting people he loves, of him hurting Jill, and it's this really cool constant little conflicting turmoil with him, that he keeps giving into the violent impulses, and he doesn't want to. Whereas Jill, on the other hand, is this really shy, timid, goody two-shoes girl who, is also bullied, who gets pushed around, who is constantly having to take care of a grieving mother who's slowly falling apart. And, in one chapter and early on, she describes just wanting to scream and like throw stuff and just, cause, chaos, but she doesn't. She holds it in, and it's her desire of just wanting to release it, release that darkness, but she holds it in. So that's what I really liked too about Tristan and Jill as protagonists, is that where one is constantly unleashing their dark desires, another one is constantly keeping it in. And quite honestly, what both are doing is not good for them at all. Obviously Tristan letting the beast take over as frequently as it has, while he, doesn't really have control over it. He doesn't have a good handle on his emotions, where Jill also doesn't have a good handle on her emotions either, because she's not, getting them out, in a healthy way. She's keeping everything bottled in. And I thought that was really cool, the duality of like the darkness within both of them. But also what this book tells is how while darkness can be scary at times, there is beauty in it. There is inspiration in it. So for example, with Tristan, he actually happens to be like this prodigy pianist. And in one of the earlier chapters, Jill is describing Tristan as he's playing at her grand piano in her living room, how the melody he's playing, which he's improving, by the way, very big note, but that he's improving, and it's just such a dark, grievous melody, but within it's so beautiful, and it's like tragic, and it just like brings about her emotions that she would otherwise hide. And it, like at some points, like a tear rolls down her eye, that melodrama tear. But he also understands, his darkness, and while he hates, the beast and how the beast kind of just takes over whenever his emotions are running high, he also sees the beauty in his darkness, and he thrives on that beauty. So then we have Jill, who we also come to find out has a really big, not prodigical, talent, I think, I don't know, but basically, a prodigy type talent, but she is talented in the way of painting. And so the book kind of tells us that, towards the beginning of the book, she's struggling with this self-portrait that she has to paint for like her final. And she gets everything else, done, her upper torso, her face and stuff. But the only thing that's missing is her eyes. She has painted her eyes, but every time she paints them, it's not right. And she can never figure it out. And she's constantly struggling. And throughout the book, whenever they mention it, it is something that she finds that she struggles with. And then at some point, obviously, based off of the back of the book, she gets a taste of the formula they create that draws out her, dark desires and, the darkness within her. And that offers her the ability to be able to paint the eyes that she has struggled so long for. And she kind of like has this little epiphany moment where she realizes that it's like, oh, so they're, her own darkness, while it is bad, because she does some shit that's bad, but out of that darkness she draws the inspiration, and she's able to finally kind of like see her true self and paint her eyes the way she wants them to, which is that has the darkness in them, but within that darkness is true beauty. And it's within that true beauty of, working through that darkness and being able to control it, contain it in a healthy way for both of them, which is something that I really loved in terms of the message. I felt like that was such a good story, story message, especially for a young adult novel. Again, I feel like back in the day I didn't get that message, and maybe if I did, it didn't hit well with me at all, or maybe it did. I don't know. I just really appreciated though the message, like at least for today's time in my life, because that is still a very important message that I feel like everyone needs to learn about and accept in themselves. All right, so in terms of rating Jekel Loves Hyde, if you are planning on buying a book for someone of a younger reader, either in high school or going into high school, I would definitely recommend buying them this book, especially if they're, into some romance, into a little bit of, dark, the emo phase and stuff, I would definitely recommend buying this book for them. Digitally, physically, however you choose to. In that retrospect, I would rate that 5 out of 5 coffee cups. If we're thinking about reading it for ourselves, in that retrospect, I would have to say 3.5 out of 5. Just because, again, it is a young adult book. It has a lot of cringe. And while there is a really good story and a really good message behind it, I feel like it's not worth the effort to have to go through that cringe to get that good story. Honestly, I did it for you. You're welcome. So, thank you guys for joining me for another Books and Coffee. I had so much fun reading my books of the month. But the next month is my birthday month. So I'm really excited for that one. I have some really, really fun surprises for you guys in terms of like what the theme is going to be. And I can't wait to share it with you guys, especially when I start doing my little posts and stuff. But yeah, guys, please do not forget to like, to subscribe, to share, however you choose to help out. Thank you to all of my new friends and followers. I love you guys so much. And I'll see you next time.